Hello, and welcome to the Grand Circle Tour. I'm your host and conductor, Michael Campbell. Today, our journey takes us through the story and evolution of Casey Jr., with stops in animation, theme parks, and collectibles. We've got a clean stack and clear track, so welcome aboard.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Once Upon a Train.
Our story begins in 1939 when Helen Aberson Mayer and her husband wrote a book titled Dumbo the Flying Elephant. Around this time, Walt Disney was looking for the subject of an animated film to follow Fantasia. Walt soon acquired the film rights to Dumbo based on the recommendation of his licensing representative, Disney legend Kay Kamen. Helen's book mentions a circus train, but it was unnamed, and apparently the book's illustrator, Helen Durney, created no art of it. Walt needed to transform this children's book into a screenplay. He called upon Dick Huemer and Joe Grant, who had collaborated on Fantasia. Dick and Joe added characters and scenes to expand the book's 32 pages into a feature film. Among these additional characters is a spunky little steam engine, Casey Jr. He was named after the fabled locomotive engineer John Luther Jones, better known as Casey. Jones' legendary real-life bravery was memorialized in the popular 1909 folk song, The Ballad of Casey Jones. Casey Jr.'s first screen appearance wasn't in Dumbo, though. He was featured in a segment of 1941's The Reluctant Dragon. On a tour of the studio, we learn how a Sonovox device transformed Margaret White's voice into Casey's whistle, shouting, "All aboard! All aboard!" Disney legend Ward Kimball crafted Casey Jr.'s design. Kimball's love of trains was well known, and in his own words, he usually got the train projects at the studio. Ward is a key character in the history of trains in Disney, and is the subject of another Once Upon a Train episode. An early story draft of Dumbo included a human engineer for Casey Jr., and here we see that Ward sketched a caricature of himself for that role. This maquette, now on display at the Walt Disney Family Museum in San Francisco, shows how Ward was able to give Casey Jr. an expressive personality suitable for the story. With a voice and an image, Casey Jr. just needed theme music that captured his fun and feisty spirit. Disney legends Frank Churchill and Ned Washington, who both won Academy Awards for Dumbo, created the jolly little tune and lyrics. Interestingly, the I Think I Can segment from the film was not an original Disney studio idea. It came from an early 1900s folktale that became The Little Engine That Could book, first published in the 1920s. It certainly fit Casey Jr.'s character, though. Dumbo was a box office success. Disney was the first motion picture studio to broadly license their characters for merchandise, and Casey Jr. was no exception. The Story of Casey Jr. book was published in 1941. This book includes many illustrations, some of which were unused gags for the movie, and would later appear in other Disney animation. Casey's image could be found on just about everything: coloring books, TV trays, wall art, cookie jars, billboards, and this wooden Strombecker pull toy. It's not surprising that the Casey Jones Jr. Railroad would be one of the original attractions at Disneyland. In an area originally planned to be the new home of Walt Disney's Carolwood Pacific Railroad, the Casey Jr. circus train would travel in and around Lilliputian Land, an attraction now known as Storybook Land Canal Boats. In this early concept art, Casey Jr. would have wound his way around the Big Rock Candy Mountain. Aero development was key to the construction of Disneyland, having engineered, built, and installed Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, the Mad Tea Party, Dumbo the Flying Elephant, Snow White's Scary Adventures, and major work on the King Arthur Carousel. Aero development was also tasked with the fabrication of the Casey Jr. circus train. Using concept art by Imagineers Bruce Bushman and Bob Gurr, Aero constructed Casey and his consist in Mountain View, California. Turning a 2D fictional cartoon character into a running human passenger-carrying 3D train requires some clever engineering. The train's motive power is actually the Calliope car. The Casey Jr. figure is mostly a fiberglass shell, where the ride operator sits and operates the train's controls. Aero Development also fabricated the circus train cars. Interestingly, the two open-air cars feature chariot sides that came from the machine that would become the King Arthur Carousel. Aero used the original wood carvings to create enough sides to use on the two sled cars. Michael Broggie, author of Walt Disney's Railroad Story, tells how his father, Disney legend Roger Broggie, was testing this ride a few days before Disneyland opened. The Casey Jr. unit proved to be too light and nearly flipped backwards while climbing a steep hill. Luckily, a nearby worker was able to grab Casey Jr.'s front and lower it to the tracks, thereby averting disaster. To ensure it was okay to run on opening day, lead weights were added to Casey's front, and Roger Broggie himself operated it. It was shut down the next day to lower the railroad's grade. Casey Jr. Circus Train reopened on July 31, 1955, and has been safely operating since. This lovable locomotive appears in other Disney parks, including a roller coaster in Disneyland Paris, a splash and soak area at the Magic Kingdom in Florida, and proudly led the Main Street Electrical Parade starting in 1972. Casey Jr. continues to be popular today. He recently appeared on screen in the Mickey Mouse Tokyo Go short, and in Tim Burton's live-action Dumbo remake, where it looks like he had a stop in Halloween Town. Some modern merchandise includes sculptures from the Walt Disney Classic Collection, as well as Jim Shore, Pop Funko figures, the Disneyland Attractions ticket booth, created by Kevin and Jody, which includes a replica ticket, a popcorn bucket, and this model. As I discuss in another episode, I worked with Accucraft since the late 1990s. Together, we've created running models of Walt Disney's Lily Bell and some of the Disney park engines. In 2005, I had Accucraft create this version of Casey Jr. that could run on G-gauge track. On his cap, really his headlamp, we put the number 7 on one side and 9 on the other to honor the numbers that the two park Casey Jr.'s wear. Also, I opted not to include the rear view mirrors, and these depart too much from the film version. The Accucraft Casey Jr. model premiered in the Disney catalog. Sadly, sales didn't meet expectations, so only 300 units were made. This meant we had to cancel our plan to create the matching circus cars. Curiously, people now greatly desire this Casey Jr. model, and these have sold for more than $1,000 at auction. I've learned when it comes to Disney to never say never, so who knows? Maybe we will make those circus cars someday.
Thank you for joining me on this trip, and I'll see you on our next Grand Circle Tour. Until then, happy rails.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this Grand Circle Tour on Once Upon a Train. For your convenience, the like and subscribe buttons will remain open for at least one additional hour. Thank you.